Despite still refusing to concede the US election, Donald Trump is allowing the transition of power to begin. He's authorised the GSA, the agency responsible for the process, to begin initial protocols that would recognise Joe Biden as the winner of the election. But the president says his legal challenges over the election result will continue. Joining us now is John Barron, host of Planet America. And John, this is the closest we've seen Trump get to recognising the result of the election. What is the process? What does it mean?
He's still not very close. As you mentioned, Eddie, he's using words such as initial protocols rather than transition, and we will still prevail rather than I have clearly lost. So there's still a disconnect between the reality of the situation the president is in and what he's prepared to say publicly. But this is an important step. It's a largely administrative measure. The GSA frees up about $10 million worth of already congressionally approved money that pays for things like office spaces for the president-elect's transition team. So as President-elect Biden is assembling his key staff, who will be moving into the White House at midday on the 20th of January next year, as Biden's taking the oath of office, the removalists come in, the rugs come out, the phones are disconnected, and you've got a whole new administration arrives in the space of a couple of hours. This has to happen quickly, cleanly, without there being any kind of point of weakness in America's national security. And of course, it has to happen in the middle of a pandemic, making it doubly complicated just from a logistical point of view, so it takes planning. What this also indicates as well is that the president is now prepared to, it seems from his tweets on this subject, allow President-elect Biden to receive the kind of security and intelligence briefings that in the ordinary course he should have been receiving for 2.5 weeks now, but hasn't because of the recalcitrance of this president in what is quite an unprecedented series of frivolous lawsuits that are going absolutely nowhere, but creating a sense of crisis that the orderly transition is being disrupted.
Yeah, so they've lost a bit of time here. I mean, this green light should have been given about 2 weeks ago, as you say.
Yeah, and this is really important historically, Gemma. If you look back to the 9/11 Commission report after September 11, 2001, they pointed to the fact that there was a month after the 2000 election, when the Florida recount was happening between Al Gore and George W. Bush, that even though then Governor George W. Bush was receiving intelligence briefings, he wasn't yet in full transition mode and getting security clearances for all sorts of incoming administration staff, and that created a gap in knowledge. So even though the then Clinton administration gave full cooperation to the incoming Bush administration, even before Gore was declared to have lost that election, time was still lost. Just a few weeks can make something like 9/11 that much more likely to happen. So this is very, very serious stuff, and that President Trump has finally bowed to a bit of pressure to stop being a dog in the manger over this it's a gratifying sign, but he is still continuing on with these pretty wacky lawsuits that have a significant number of Americans still not realising that Donald Trump is not going to be president in under 60 days from now.
Now, as to who Joe Biden is surrounding himself with, is it jobs for mates?
Yes, it is, but in a good way. You could argue that Joe Biden, in announcing key national security positions, diplomatic positions, Tony Blinken as the incoming Secretary of State, former Deputy Secretary of State under Barack Obama, former National Security Advisor to Joe Biden as Vice President, former Senior Advisor to Joe Biden back to the 1990s when he was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Anthony Blinken is Joe Biden's foreign policy brain in a way, and is a very good choice because we saw between President Trump and Rex Tillerson, his former Secretary of State, if the two aren't on the same page, then internationally, other world leaders do not know, am I talking to somebody who has the ear of the president or not? Tony Blinken and Joe Biden are very much on the same page. And the same can be said for the other key appointments that we've been hearing about. Not only have they worked, people like Jake Sullivan worked with Joe Biden for many years, they've also worked with each other. So when we've got somebody like former Secretary of State John Kerry coming into a newly created national cabinet role overseeing climate change, principally to get America back into the Paris Climate Accords, which John Kerry as Secretary of State signed off on for the United States. Jake Sullivan as well, to get back into the Iran nuclear deal. There are a number of key positions here that are essentially going back and finishing unfinished business or getting back to where we were in January 2017 before Donald Trump started tearing up any treaty with Barack Obama's signature on it.
Speaking of Trump, can we get a check-in of where he's at with his legal challenges? He's
really nowhere with his legal challenges. The state of Michigan has certified the results there. He's essentially shifted from a legal process here to trying to get state-level Republican officials to stand in the way of certification of these results on the basis of he doesn't like the results, trying to overturn a 150,000 vote margin in Michigan because of a handful of possible irregularities in Detroit. He wanted to disenfranchise basically all the black people in Detroit. Judges are tossing these things out and castigating Trump's lawyers for even bringing these cases before them when they are so flimsy, so puerile. And yet President Trump is still trying to exert what is quite improper pressure on a number of administrative people along the course of the event up until, we assume, mid-December when the Electoral College itself will vote. So his legal avenues are closing fast. Now his kind of improper pressure avenues are also getting nowhere. One of the Republicans in Michigan voted to certify the result in favour of Joe Biden. So he didn't do what Trump asked him to do last week, which was to block this. So we've got a bunch of people who technically have rubber stamps in this process that are being pressured by President Trump. They are still rubber stamping at this stage. And even if they were not to, they themselves would get into trouble legally and somebody else would do it for them. So this is not really a barrier to the certification of this election result. President Trump really is just, at the moment, kind of just discrediting his legacy further by not accepting that there is a process here that is happening, whether he likes it or not.
John, thank you.
Thanks, Gemma.
Host of Planet America, John Barron.